meeting. If you would all stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Thank you. The first order of business would be the approval of the agenda. Are there any additions, deletions, or changes to the agenda?
I move the adoption of the agenda as printed.
Second?
I'll second.
Second by Eric. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Passes unanimously. General public comment. Are there any members of the public that wish to speak at this time? Hearing none, we'll move on to the minutes of the December 16th, 2020 meeting. The minutes should have been in your packet. Is there a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
So moved.
I'll
Motion
second
by
it.
Eric, second.
I'll second it.
Second by Lynette. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. Approval of warrants. Warrants would have been sent to you via your email. Questions should be sent to Lewis with respect to warrants. A motion would be in order for the approval of the warrants.
I'll make the motion to approve warrants.
Motion by Lynette, second.
I'll second. Lance?
Second by Lance. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Superintendents report. Chris?
Thanks, Lisa. I have a few things to discuss. Most of you have heard this in our local board meetings, but most of our focus this past month has really been centered on finishing budgets and preparing for our town meetings, as well as the upcoming budget votes. All the meetings have been set. Quarry Valley's will be on February 23rd at 7 o'clock. Wells Spring, the informational meeting will be at February 24th at 7. Ira's town meeting is set for March 1st at 7 p.m. And Rutland's town meeting is at March 1st at 7 p.m. as well. All voting will take place via Australian ballots. I do want to make note that ballots will not be mailed this year, but if you do need an absentee ballot, please contact your town clerk. If you have any questions regarding any of these meetings, you can contact myself or Wendy Bixby or one of your town clerks for more information. I do want to give a special thank you to the town clerks, Karen at Ira, Nora at Wells, Laura at Middletown, Betsy at Pulteney, Celia at Proctor, Chris at West Rutland, and Carrie at Rutland Town. There's been a kind of a crazy year for all of us. It's been a pretty steep learning curve, and these town clerks have been great in terms of working with us and getting things set up. So I just want to give them a publicly say thank you to each one of them for all their hard work. I've heard some horror stories from other superintendents about the work that they've had to do with town clerks, and every interaction I've had with our town clerks has been great. So thanks. The links for the meetings will be published on the Grcsu website. Some of you may notice that we have a new website. It's slowly being rolled out. We are trying to move things over from the old site to the news, but all the links will be posted in the calendar. We'll also be posting the links. The link can be found on the town warnings, but we'll also be doing it in the brochures and in the booklets that were sent out. But if people need a copy of the link, just once again, reach out to myself or Wendy, and we're more happy to send you a copy of the link. Real quick, I just want to just touch upon, as was the case in November, this year for town voting, March 2nd, there are two schools, Rutland Town and Proctor Junior Senior High School, will have to shift to remote learning for the same reason we did in November. Just we have a lot of protocols and mitigation strategies in place. We do, try to, monitor visitors to the building, and we think as those days that they're town polling places, just in the best interest of everyone, we would shift those two schools on that date to remote learning. So we're giving you a bit of a heads up just so people can plan accordingly. And I know that the building principals will probably be sending something out this week in their weekly newsletters as well. I was asked also to, we discussed this in December, but I know that just a point of clarification. But at our December GRCSU board meeting, we rolled out what our learning model would be for the remainder of the year. And I just want to reiterate that our learning model that's currently in place, 4 days in person and 1 day remote, will take place through the remainder of the year. That is what we're going to go with. I know we've heard Governor Scott's and Secretary French's aspirational views of what the spring may look like in terms of a return to full in person. But as of right now, our plan, the 4 days in person and 1 day remote, remains intact. If we do receive guidance or direction from the AOE or DOH that would cause us to adjust, then we will adjust accordingly, but we'll let you know in advance. But I just wanted to reiterate, because there was some confusion from some parents as they heard that press conference about what was going to happen. But like I said, we stated that in our December board meeting, that this is the model we had for the first part of the year that helped to get us through this, and we're going to stay with that model through the remainder of the year. February break is February 15th through 19th. There's really not much to state with this. Obviously, we encourage people, to limit the travel, the multi-household gatherings. I do want to state that we will be offering meals for families during this time. So building principals will be sending more information out with that in their weekly newsletters for the next week or two. We will be discussing that with the admin team tomorrow in our meeting. But we, like I said before, we'll do the same thing we did during the winter break, that providing meals. And I don't know what day it's going to look like. It'll probably be the same boxes, I guess the box lunches and breakfast that we had in the past, but we will have meals for everyone. Just 1 second, I have to admit somebody. Okay. The last thing I just want to touch upon is I talked about this in Corey Valley, but it's a work group that we have formed in Corey Valley. It's kind of in its infancy. I say that because it's the first step in a much larger strategic plan. Myself and the 3 building administrators from West Rutland, Poultney, and Proctor, and the school counselors met to really discuss how we can better unify our 3 schools. We all know about Act 46, and we've looked at ways in which we could better streamline resources. We could maximize learning opportunities for our students, and we have some pretty good ideas about things we can do right now, and also as we move into a strategic plan with which we'll invite more people. Like I said, we'll invite teachers, community members, other stakeholders be a part of this process. But we are looking at doing certain things along the lines of a common transcript, common graduation requirements across our 3 schools, a common schedule and first period start times. As I said before, one of the things we look at is within each of our schools, I think we do a nice job. But I think as we look at maximizing opportunities across the 3 buildings, particularly along multiple pathways, we can really provide our students with more course offerings that are more in line in terms of what their future plans are, and kind of streamline that process. So we're looking at what that might look like. We're also looking at a common handbook, particularly in lines of athletic eligibility, extracurricular, and code of conduct. And we're also looking at unifying honor awards and distinction. So therefore, the same criteria we use at all 3 schools. So it's, like I said, this is one of our first steps of our work that we're doing. I do want to thank our 3 counselors, Phyllis, Tracy, and Lauren, and Marissa, who's the intern at West Rutland, as well as our building principals, Jay, Joe, and Joanne, as well, for all their hard work thus far. So any questions?
Chris, this is Kristen Ross. This isn't really a question, just a comment, and I don't want to forget because you listed the meetings, the town meeting dates for virtual meetings. So I believe our next GRCSU meeting is one of those. So just sort of FYI, we can talk about it at the end of this meeting to see if we need to schedule.
Yep, perfect.
Great, thank you, Chris. Lisa Maxon, Assistant Superintendent Report.
Good evening, everyone. I know you have my written report, just a few updates since I sent that to you. We received word from the state that our Title I comparability report has been approved, and also our Title IV spending report has been submitted. So those are new pieces. There's been just a ton of grant work in the last 6 weeks or so for me. Numerous monitoring and reporting for the states, additional investments for some of our grants, revisions, working with the business office on the ESSER grant. So a lot of grant work, trying to make sure that we really fully utilize those funds during this school year to support our students and our staff as best we can, and keep up with state requirements. So lots of work in that end. I've also been working really closely with the technology department on the Infinite Campus transcript for the high schools. We've now submitted it. It's in the hands of the developers, so they are working on their end of the programming. But we did a lot of programming on our end to make sure that all the things that we wanted to see were going to be in place, and all the programming that Milt needed to do ahead of time before they would hand it over to the developers. So we're really very confident in the final quote and proposal that went through for programming. We think it's going to be really accurate, and hopefully will slim down the revisions needed to finalize that process. We also have a guidance intern at West Rutland School, Marissa, who's taken over as long-term sub for Lauren while she's out on leave. She's going to be helping us to make sure that all the data that we have in the system is updated and ready to go, so that when that programming is finished, we can click the button and start printing these and making sure that they look exactly the way that we want them to. So we'll bring some versions probably to the Quarry Valley board when we get to that place. But if you would like any future updates on that or any news, just let me know as well. Other than that, if anyone has any questions.
Are there any questions for Lisa?
Lisa, I don't have a question for Lisa. Actually, there's one thing I forgot to discuss. So sorry, Lisa. I just want to make sure that we've had our third round of COVID testing today at the GRCSU, and we had 193 staff members take the test today. So we should be seeing results with the next couple of days. And also, I always like to give an update. We have had 7 positive cases across the GRCSU thus far this year. So most of you are aware of that as we send out letters to inform you as to what's going on. But I just want to make sure that we're being transparent, we're being open with that, and just to disclose that, GRCSU. Thanks.
Great, thank you. All right, hearing no other questions, we'll move on to personnel. In your packet, you have 2 resignations. Madeline Morse from Proctor Elementary School, and Max Battles from Proctor High School. Are there any questions about the resignations? A motion would be in order to accept the resignations.
I'll move to accept the resignations as presented.
Motion by Eric. Is there a second?
I'll second it. So Lynette.
Second by Lynette. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. There are, you should also have a list of contract recommendations. There is one adjustment under support staff. If you would cross out the last person, Brooke Lippman. We'll be removing her from this list. She's accepted a job elsewhere. Are there any questions about the contract recommendations?
Lisa, this is Clarence. The one we just did, Max, and was that Rebecca, the one that wants extended leave? Is that the other resignation, or is that a different one?
No, that's different.
Okay, because I didn't find a copy of that. Maybe I just didn't print it off right.
You didn't find a copy of the resignations?
Yeah, I had Max's, but I don't have the other one.
Oh, there was a letter from him, and there was also a printout, just like the contract recommendations. So maybe you just printed out the letter.
Okay.
We'll talk about the leave a little bit further
Okay,
down.
fine. All right. If that was a resignation that we passed and it really should have been something else, I was asking about that. That's all.
Okay. So are there any questions about the contract recommendations that are before you? Hearing none, a motion would be in order for approval.
I make a motion.
Motion by Jim Mumford, second.
All second.
I'll second.
Second by Eric. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Open positions handout is informational only. So we will move on to finance, and I'll turn it over to.
Good evening. I have 3 updates for you this evening. The first one is on the CRF funds. So the CRF funds ended on December 30th. We expended $791,000 in FY21. And I submitted for reimbursement to the state for those funds last week, and so at this point we're just waiting for reimbursement. We did have about $80,000 in unspent funds, and that was mainly just due to POs that we had in place that were not spent for staffing, which we were not able to find for both building-based subs, maintenance subs, and then some tele services. Any questions on that?
So we have money that we got to return to them. Is that the long and short of it?
Well, we didn't receive it. It's based on reimbursement. We had a grant award for $893,000. We spent $791,000 in FY21 and about $20,000 in FY20. So there was about $80,000 that was unspent. We're not sure. The state has talked about possibly extending that, but they have not provided that guidance yet. I think they're still trying to decide on their end how they're going to expend those funds. They're probably waiting for people to submit reimbursements to see how much money they have left. So at this time, anything that we were funding through CRF, we've moved to the ESSER grant. We received an allocation of $446,000 in ESSER funds. So we built that grant about 2 weeks ago, which included local building subs, Kelly subs, some maintenance subs, supplies for technology, instruction, and maintenance. A lot of the same things that we've been funding through CRF, we've just moved to ESSER for the second half of the year. The next item is the Grcsu forecast that was in the packet. Currently, I'm estimating that we're running a surplus in the Grcsu general fund of approximately $25,000. This is mainly due to savings in technology. We had one position that we did not fill. Some of those savings are being offset where we're overspending, and the overspending is due to Workman's comp was over by about $10,000 due to increase in rates, as well as an increase in overall salaries at the SU. We had the $10,000 over in administration for the superintendent mentor. We are over on legal fees and just a few other areas. But so those are all offsetting the savings in technology. But we're still planning on ending the year right now with a surplus of about $25,000. Any questions on that? All right, and then the last and final item is I just wanted to give an update to you regarding.
Louis, can I just ask you about the workman's comp? Is that going to be is that figured into our budget for the next fiscal round? Because that,
We've been increasing our budget over the, yes, we've been trying to catch up to workman's comp. It's both the rates have been increasing as well as our base salaries. And so there is a lag on when we build that. So we have been increasing our budgets locally to catch up with that increase.
thanks.
And the last final item is just an update on the property yield. So when we built our budgets, we talked a lot about the property yield. This is the number that comes from the state that determines our tax rates. The tax commissioner gave his recommendation on December 1st that stated the property yield was going to be, well, his recommendation was a property yield of $10,763, which was a decrease from FY21 property yield of approximately 2%. The FY21 property yield is $10,998. There was many factors that he discussed in his letter that resulted in that decrease in the yield, including estimated increase in education spending, the state deficit, and state retirement, teachers' retirement. Since then, we've, in the last few days, have received some updated estimates. Just a few days ago, we received an email from the state saying, with two numbers, one being the worst case scenario, hopefully, which was 10,998 yield, which would be flat over FY21, with the possibility of the yield going up to $11,239. So I have provided you an update on what those changes in the yield would do to your local tax rates. I'm going to share my screen, but even before I do that, so I built the things that I'm going to share with you right now. I built it based on those recommendations we received 2 days ago. Just today, we received another email from the state saying that the Ways and Means Committee passed the state yield of $11,385, which is a further increase. Even above what I am going to show you in a second. So as we discussed in budgeting, as the property yield increases, it decreases your local tax rate. So this is definitely a good thing for taxpayers to see this property yield going up. All right, so I'm going to share my screen now. So what you see is each district and town and the budget data that we passed in both December and January, whenever your budget was passed. So you have your FY22 expense, FY22 education spending, the percentage increase in ed spending. So none of that's changing. So what's changing is the three columns to the right. So the first set of columns yield 10,763. That's what we use during the budget process. And then the next two columns are showing what the tax rate would be if the yield increase. So the second column with the yield of 10,998 has approximately a 3-cent decrease in the tax rate for each district, except for Wells. Wells is the only district that's not affected by a change in the yield, and that's due to the fact that Wells has not yet reached their unified rate. So their tax rate is still coming up. It's meeting that 5% threshold, and even with the yield at the highest amount, 11,239, it's still not affecting their tax rate. So the yield at 10,998 has approximately a 3-cent decrease, and then the yield at 11,239 has an additional 3-cent decrease. And I'll just read these off for people that can't see the screen if you're calling in. So Rutland Town, during budgeting, we talked about a tax rate of $1.55, which was a 2.66% increase. With the yield at 10,998, you'd be looking at a tax rate of $1.52, a 0.47% increase. And a yield 11,239, you'd see a tax rate of $1.48, almost $1.49, which is a 1.68% decrease. And then if the tax rate goes up even further, or if the yield goes up even further, you're looking at another penny to a penny and a half decrease. IRA, during budgeting, we looked at a tax rate of $1.53, which was a 0.1% increase. The next yield would show a tax rate of $1.50, which is a 3.9% increase. And then the yield at 11,239, which would be $1.46, almost $1.47, which is a 1.6% increase.
Louis, all these tax rate numbers are pre-CLA?
They are post CLA. There's a note at the bottom.
Okay.
Yep. Wells Springs, for Wells, as I stated, the tax rate was $1.62. Their tax rate would stay constant in all three yield amounts. For Middletown, their tax rate was $1.65, rounded up, which was a 1% increase. At a yield of $10,998, you would have a tax rate of $1.61, which is down 1.17%. And at a yield of $11,239, you'd be at $1.58, which would be a 3.32% decrease. Corey Valley, for Pulteney, you'd be at budget time was $1.55, which was 3.2% up. The next model is $1.52, which was almost 1% up. And then the yield of 11,239 is $1.49, which is down 1.3%. Proctor, you're at $1.52 approximately. Yield at 10,998, you'd be at $1.48, which is down 1.1%. And then yield at 11,239, you're at $1.45, which is down 3.3%. And then finally, West Rutland, we're at $1.43. Yield of 10,998, they'd be at $1.40, which is up 1.9%. And a yield of 11,239, you'd be at $1.37, which is down 0.4%. They had a big drop in CLA, as well as their CLA is above 100%. That's one of the main reasons why their tax rate is so different from the other two towns. So, I mean, this is all just an estimate at this point. We don't know what the state's going to decide. As I said, the committee passed 11,385, which will make these numbers look even better by about another penny and a half. But until it's actually voted on by the full legislative body, then we don't really know what it's going to be. The big question that I have for you tonight is what you want to present to the taxpayers in the town meeting presentation. So for Ira and Rutland Town, the reports have already gone in the town report. So if we do change any of the numbers from the town report, then there could be some confusion, but we could just explain that our estimates are different, or we can stick with the same estimates and then just explain that the state yield is potentially changing and let them know what that change is going to be. For Corey Valley and Wells Springs, we are putting the packets together now for the annual reports. Our goal was to get them to the printer by Friday. So we still do have time to change those reports to reflect one of these yield numbers if you like, or we can stick with the tax commissioner's recommendation again and just explain it in the presentation.
Well, I'll speak for Corey Valley. I think we should stick with the recommendation and explain it in the presentation. I mean, it's all just a what if, as you said, until they vote. So, I mean, hopefully they're going in the right direction, but I'd rather have it look like there was a positive change than a negative change.
I agree with Lisa as far as Wells Springs goes. I think we had something definite in writing from the state, and these other things are just estimates. So, I mean, I know the tax commissioner's letter always goes up from there, but I think putting the definite in and then explaining these others that could very well impact it positively. Because we just aren't going to know what the yield is probably until sometime almost June.
Yeah, I also agree.
Kristen or Jim from Corey Valley, what's your thought or feeling on this?
This is Kristen. I would agree. We'll just need to make it really clear, to just say, I think these numbers will probably change, and hopefully in the right direction. So, I think this happens all the time, right? It's always a little bit different from what we put in January versus what it actually is in May or June. So I think people expect, if people who are paying that close attention probably sort of know that. So we just need to say that, this is the best information we have at print, and go with that.
Jim, are you in agreement with going with what we know from the tax commissioner and then just sharing information at the presentation?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're good with that from Corey Valley. I don't want to speak for anybody else.
Well, Spring, I believe we're fine with that approach, but I don't know.
Okay.
Are you, Meredith, you agree with that?
Yep, I'm good.
Okay, thank you.
For IRA, as you mentioned, Louis, our report's already gone out, so the plan to clarify at the meeting itself recent developments sounds perfect.
And if I could jump in, Rutland Town, of course, and we've already got it sent out to the printers and everything, but it was more than explained that the budget pretty much showed the worst case scenario and that it would probably decrease. So it just, I think, looks better because the entire supervisory union is pretty much doing it the same way. So we look more unified.
Agreed.
Okay,
Louis,
that's how I'll proceed.
That's it?
That's how I'll proceed,
Well,
yes.
you know what, Louis? I'm happy to say at least you brought us some positive information this evening. It was sometimes when you come, I scared what you're going to share with us. But tonight it was a pleasure to have you. All right, moving on to old business. Is there any old business? Hearing none. New business. There was a letter for a leave request in your packet, and I will let Chris speak to that.
All right. I do believe Christine's here as well, so if, she can answer any questions as well on this, but I need to find the letter, I'm sorry. So we do have an IA at one of our schools who's looking for an extended unpaid leave for the remainder of the year. It's due to COVID concerns. It placed this individual in a particular hardship in which the unpaid leave is the best option for this individual at this time. So she's requesting this leave. And Christine, I don't know if there's anything you would need to add to this.
I don't think so. I mean, I think it's just, staff that's been with us, because of COVID, they're, experiencing difficulty with being at work. So they've requested that they get extended leave.
Right. And with the childcare leave ending as well, has caused some complications for this individual.
And so the leave is through July 11th, which seems strange that we would okay the leave into the next contract year. I would feel, and I don't know how the board feels, I think that it would be appropriate to, if the board concurs, to approve the leave through June 30th. And at that time, if that additional 11 days is needed, which is a bit of an oddity, I think, then
Right,
I think they
technically,
should come back.
I think their contract ends on June 30th anyhow, I believe. So, yeah, I agree with that, Lisa, that is an odd date.
So what is the pleasure of the board?
Lisa, I agree. I think it should be changed to end in June 30th.
What does this contractually and under the support agreement, this is a legitimate request?
Yes.
I don't know the contract well enough to.
Yes, this is legitimate, Clarence.
So does the board wish to grant the leave request and change the date from, are they currently on leave? It says January 11th.
Yes.
Yeah, they have
Already
been
left.
out.
To
I'll
grant
make
them
that-
leave from
I'm sorry, I'll
January
make
11th to,
June 30th.
yeah.
Sorry, keep walking on you. I'll make that motion.
All right. So the
second.
motion is to grant the request from January 11th to June 30th. Motion by Lynette, second by Lance. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Right, Chris or Christine, can you communicate with this individual that there was a change from January or July 11th to June 30th?
Yes, I'll work with Debbie on that as well. Debbie
Great,
Debrakis.
thank you. And the second piece, I believe, is you, Chris, or you and Chris and Lisa, the GRCSU COVID response plan.
Yes, and I'll start off and I'll let Lisa kind of bring it home. She's our resident expert on this response plan. But I, as I said before, we've had 7 positive cases in the SU this year. And I think I was saying to Lisa, I think maybe a couple weeks ago, that we're very familiar with the process now in terms of where it's at. But those who are not intimately involved still are, don't quite understand what goes into this. And when we get a phone call or an email from someone says, "Hey, my child," or a staff member says, "Hey, I've tested positive," there is a process in place. It's not just myself and Lisa, and the building administrators figure out, well, what do we do? It is very formal, step by step, and I think there has been some frustration from staff and from parents because of the flow of information sometimes is not as quick as they would like. And I think we just wanted to provide this response plan so one, you can see the extent of it, how detailed, because it is a very lengthy, it's a very long day in some cases, and each case is unique, where I think at least can talk about that a little later. But depending on when that individual was termed as being infectious, were they in school, were they not in school, and there's just a lot that can be done. I think our school nurses and our building administrators have done a fantastic job with this, but I think we just wanted to kind of touch base and just give you the opportunity to ask any questions to clarify, and also just, like I said, I'll at least quickly kind of run through the day with you. So, Lisa.
Thanks, Chris. You all have a copy of this, so I'm not going to go through every detail, but I will say that the 2 parts that take the most time for us and that are really thorough, detail-oriented moments in time. The first is creating the list of people who we believe may have been in contact with the infected person if they were in school during an infectious period. And our schools have worked really hard all year long to put preparation pieces in place. So there are Google Drives pre-populated with schedules, seating charts, bus seating charts, all kinds of information about where students are throughout the day. Some of the schools have pictures of their classrooms, so you can see exactly where the children are sitting and how far apart they are. As the semester changes, also for our 7-12 schools, all that work has been done again to compile all this information into one place. And they have sign-in sheets on their doors that are collected daily and compiled by administrators and nurses also. So just a ton of work overall that in particular nurses, secretaries, and principals have been working on since the summer with their leadership teams in each of their buildings, so that when we have a case, we're not chasing down information. We already have it at our fingertips, and we're able to confirm with individuals that schedules were followed, check sublogs and attendance for the day, and move as quickly as possible through that process because it is quite extensive. And the second piece that's really extensive, where I think we've created a very unique approach for our supervisory union through collaboration. I'm really proud of it and the impact it's having on this process. We learned very quickly on in our very first case that calling one-on-one to students and or staff members who are going to need to quarantine was an extremely long process. Of course, because people are anxious. They have lots and lots of questions. Some of them really understand what quarantine would look like in their house. Some of them have not thought about it and really need some help talking through, what if they have other children, and what if they're sharing bedrooms? How is that going to look in their home? And what does it mean for the rest of their family? And so what we put in place in our district, distributed process where the nurses in the other schools are the ones who make those phone calls as soon as we have the list together of people who are impacted and have gone through that process with the Department of Health. So that means you have a trained medical professional who's really up on the guidance and who has spoken, in depth with their colleagues and goes to all the Department of Health trainings and information. And that's the person who's calling those families. And in some cases, it's a little strange because it's not necessarily your school nurse. But for one person to make that many phone calls in the middle of managing an intense situation in their building, first, is not logistically possible, and second, takes way too long to get information out to families. So by distributing this, we've been able to significantly reduce the amount of time for families and staff members to have those in-depth one-on-one conversations with an expert. And then the principal and the school nurse of the school building impacted over the next coming days while people are out on quarantine, they're able to follow up and speak to all those individuals one-on-one, answer their questions, give them additional information about teaching and learning and things that will be impacted for their child. So those are just two of the pieces that even in this document, you really can't see all the work that goes into supporting both the prevention pieces, the preparation pieces, and the response pieces. I just can't say enough, as Chris did, about the amount of work that our administrators, nurses, executive assistants have gone through with their school teams. They've really worked really hard on this. And we have refined this document every single time we've had a case. If we've learned something, if we found a way to streamline it, to communicate a little bit more effectively, something that, may have been overlooked or wasn't emphasized enough in a previous training. So every week, our nurses and our admins all meet together at the beginning of our admin team meeting, and we go over any updates to this plan or any new information together, and really make sure that everybody's on the same page, is up to speed on all the information, and has the most updated plans in place and activities in place. So lots of work, great teamwork, and a really, I think, a very thorough process that we're working through this year. But we're happy to take any questions that you have on any pieces of this.
Real quickly, so there are two things I want to add. First, all decisions really are made in close consultation with the Department of Health. As Lisa said, the first people we contact, Margaret Dooley, Department of Health, we loop her in, we set up a meeting. And as we go through, like I said, the line lists and all decisions really are made, Lisa and myself, we're not health experts. We have the school nurses, we have the Department of Health who make these decisions in terms of who needs a quarantine for how long. And so it is a very close consultation with the Department of Health throughout this process. Secondly, what we've found through these instances is the fact that our teachers are doing a fantastic job in the classrooms, our building administrators, where we are seeing we're not seeing a spread within the classes, within the school settings. We've had many instances in which the one individual is the only individual that has to quarantine. No one else has been impacted because our teachers and they said they've done a fantastic job since day one of putting the protocols and strategies in place in their classrooms. And I said we can't give enough credit for this because it does allow for our schools to remain open on a day-to-day basis. And it is something important to remember because I do think sometimes some of our community members take it for granted because our staff are everything they're doing on a day-to-day is to make sure our schools stay open. And I do want to make sure that we recognize and we thank them for that because that's one thing that we really have seen is what they're doing. If our staff were not doing what they're supposed to be doing, this would have fallen apart, long ago. And they have done a great job of keeping our buildings open and keeping their kids safe. So I do want to thank them.
Kristen, Lisa, this is Kristen. I just have a curiosity question, really. So this plan, this table that you have that's extensive, does that get filed somewhere? I mean, I know you said it changes kind of every time you're editing it, improving it, et cetera. But is that something that you have to send to the Department of Health or somebody somewhere? Or is this just for our SU use and hopefully it will go on file here for the next time we have a pandemic?
Yeah, we have a shared drive that all of the nurses and the principals have access to that has all of these documents in it, but we created these documents. They were not provided to us by anyone and they don't go on file with anyone. We made them in response to experiencing this process and trying to make it more streamlined for schools in the future. So we have a shared drive and we have templates for letters and plans and line lists and all of the documents and information communication pieces. You'll all, for those of you who've gotten emails, you've probably noticed that the language is very similar when you get them, but that's because we're working off of templates to just make the whole process faster, easier, and more consistent for our team. But yeah, we have all of these records of every Department of Health meeting and all those pieces in a confidential file.
Okay, thanks.
I have another question out of curiosity. On the second page, the word script is in caps. Does that have a special meaning? It's driving me nuts.
I think when the last time that I edited that, we still had to finish the script, which is why I capitalized it. But now we have it. It's in there. So I'll fix it in the next round of revisions to make you feel better. I noticed that too. It made me laugh.
That does not slow the process at all, though, Eric. I'll just assure you that. So,
yeah.
All right. Any other questions for Chris or Lisa? Great. Thank you. Amazing job. And I do think that when, if you're unfortunate, I guess, enough to receive one of the letters, that they are very clear and concise. And there is something to be said for consistency. Where it is a template. It's nice to know everyone's receiving the same information. Before we move into executive session for a personnel issue, Kristen had noted that our next meeting is February 24th, and I don't remember who's having their Wellsprings. Sorry. So the question is, does the board wish to move the GRCSU meeting, or do you wish to skip the GRCSU meeting for the month of February, realizing that our administrators are going to be at multiple school town meetings?
Probably
My vote would be yes. That's exactly what I was going to suggest. Is there anyone that had? Go ahead.
I think skipping it is a good idea for a couple of reasons. If one, they're busy, but we'd have to move it backwards anyways, because if you moved it forward, there won't be any delegates picked yet because the local boards haven't met to create the people that are going to go to the SU delegates because of town meeting and the reorganization of all the boards. So it's better that we just skip it, not meet until the end of March, or whatever the date is there. Is it the 4th Wednesday in March? Yes.
So
Okay.
are there any objections to skipping the February GRCSU meeting? I know Lewis loves to come and see us and he'll be upset, but anybody else?
I'm all for skipping.
Hearing no objections, I sense your consensus is that we will cancel the February 24th GRCSU meeting. Is there anything else that needs to come before the board? Hearing nothing, we need to move into executive session for a personnel matter. So that would be the board, Chris, and Lewis. I think you maybe just for the first 5 minutes, perhaps to answer a question. So if it could be.
I need to be there
motion.
also, Lisa.
Yeah, I think Greg Connors should be there too.
Okay.
Are we going to, are we just going to move to executive session, or are we going to use the second meeting agenda that was sent out today for executive session?
The second meeting agenda that you have to move into executive session.
Okay.
The second meeting link. Okay?
So we'll be back here to adjourn.
Yes, we will come back here to adjourn. So a motion would be in order at 6:52 to move into executive session for personnel.
I make a motion.
Jim makes the motion, second.
I'll second.
Second by Eric. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
All right.
Any opposed?